Wong. Today we're going to talk about one of our forefathers for Merdeka, and I invited Ms. Dewa Kunjari to speak on her father. The only problem is that we have a delay of 10 minutes because she couldn't log into Zoom. So she's going to talk through my phone. So, okay, I think she's in. Surya Subramaniam. Is that?
Yeah, okay, great.
Okay,
so now I can talk on her this thing and you can
yes.
Here.
Okay. So you talk through I use your slide. Okay, let me share the slide. Okay, Deva, you can speak through.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you well.
Okay, fine. I'm so sorry. Can we get, okay, we'll get on with it.
Yes.
Good afternoon, dear friends. My name is Deva Kunjari. I'm Tun Sambanthan's daughter. Just bear with me. First of all, let me apologize. I don't know what's happened to the Zoom on my connection, but moving on. Dr. Wong and I met at an NGO meeting. He saw some of my old photographs and he said, could I speak to all of you about my father? I'm very honored to do so. I'd like to put in a little disclaimer. It's a bit like a history lesson. I hope all of you were not history haters, but please bear with me because this is more or less the story of my father's life. So I'm going to start at the end of his life. This is me and my dad, obviously many years ago. Could we go to the second slide, please, Dr. Wong? Now, this is my father. This is one of my favorite photos of him in his uniform. My mother and I used to like to see him like this because he was a 6-footer and, you know, he was slim. He used to carry the uniform so well. But I'm going to start with the end of his life. And he passed away when he was 59, just 1 month short of 60, which was unfortunate because I think there was so much more that he could offer. But having said that, now we go to the beginning, which is slide number 3. Could we go to slide number 3, please?
Okay, you continue to talk. My slide hang.
Okay.
I'm going
now,
to do it.
The thing is, I think I need to do a little bit of introduction of my father's family. Slide number 3 is actually of his family. That is his father. He had 2 mothers and his 2 brothers and a cousin. Yeah. So his father's name was Mr. Veerasamy. Mr. Veerasamy left India and came to Malaya in 1896 when he was 16 years old. He landed in Perak. He went into partnership with a 12-year-old boy called Supaya. They started doing wholesale business. Then they went into all sorts of other business. So my grandmother, the lady, the tall lady on the right, that's my father's actual mother. She was very entrepreneurial. She had cows, she sold vegetables, she sold fruit, and she used to barter whatever she grew. So the environment in which my father grew up was one of hard work, entrepreneurial creativity, and a lot of honesty, because basically what the lives that they had were the lives that they built. Now, my grandfather was completely self-made. Nobody gave him anything. And he was very keen on upgrading himself. So one of the things he used to do is he was not English literate. He used to read very widely in Tamil. And he used to read the translations of the poetry of Rabindranath Tagore, who was a Nobel laureate, translated into Tamil by Subramanya Bharatiyar, who was a Tamil poet. May we have the next slide, please? So in 1927, Rabindranath Tagore, who also composed the Indian national language and the national anthem, and he was very famous for the poetry that he wrote, nationalistic poetry. He came to Malaya in 1927, which is the next slide, Dr. Wong. And my grandfather, you can see him there on the left of Tagore, which is arms crossed. My grandfather went to meet him, and he and Tagore had a conversation. He met him in Ipoh, and then Tagore was on the way to Bali because he wanted to learn a bit about Balinese Hinduism. And on the way back, he actually telegrammed my grandfather to say, come and meet me because I would like to have a further conversation with you. So my grandfather, although he came at 16, he had a larger than life personality, and his combination of honesty, integrity, hard work, I think rubbed off on my father. My grandfather was a man, I didn't meet him because he died in 1942, well before I was born, well before even my parents were married. But apparently he had an extreme sense of compassion for the people around him. For example, when his workers had malaria, he brought them home and made my grandmothers take care of them. And when people passed away and there was no one to attend to their final rites, grandfather would do it. So that was my grandfather. So both of them were entrepreneurial. My grandfather had 3 sons and a daughter. The eldest son, he said, you take care of the family business. And for my father at 16, he sent him off to India and said, you go and get an education. So the next slide is about actually India. My father went to Annamalai University at the age of 16. He did his pre-university as well as a degree in economics. This was a time when the Quit India movement and a lot of anti-British demonstrations were going on, and my father would take part in them. He got whacked by the police. He had a scar on his back until the end. He refused to attend his convocation because the ceremony included showing allegiance to the British flag, to the Union Jack. So he got his degree by post. So that was my father in India. I don't have any pictures of the time that he was actually there, but these are some of his college mates whom he kept in touch with much later. So next slide. He returned to Malaya in 1946 after the war ended. And my grandfather had worked hard and he had left some properties. He had left a small estate. So my father and his 2 brothers basically spent their time taking care of the family things. But my father had a very strong social conscience, and he also believed very strongly in education. Even when he was in India, earning a paltry salary of something like 700 rupees, he paid for 2 students to get an education. And I've met people who met my father at the time, and he was always pushing people to go and get educated. So eventually he came back, he settled down, their businesses were going fine. So he believed very much that education is how you create opportunities as well as breaking the poverty cycle. So what he wanted to do is he wanted to set up a school for the children of Tamil plantation workers. But before we go to the school, the next slide, I'd like to say something about Sungai Siput. Our hometown, Sungai Siput, was notorious because the emergency in 1948 started with the killing of a planter manager in Sungai Siput. But it also has a deep archaeological history. So here's a photo of my father and his elder brother at home with a group of Chinese miners. And these guys had found this ancient statue, maybe circa 6 or 7 AD, while they were digging. This statue was given to the museum, Nagara, and I've seen it many times in the museum, though I haven't been to the museum in the last 10 years. There were 2 other statues also found in these diggings, also like 7, 8 AD, which have gone into private collections. So chances are there was some kind of a Buddhist settlement in Sungai Siput once upon a time. So that's the good side of Sungai Siput. Moving on to the next slide. So my father, with his belief that education is so important, he started a school together with the committee. He started a school in Sungai Siput. Previously, the Tamil school, all the children were crammed into one classroom, standard 1 to standard 6 in one classroom. So what they did was they got a Danish architect called B.M. Iversen to design a very nice school. It was innovative because one standard had a classroom. He even in each classroom made a platform so that no matter, the children were sitting at the back, they can all see the teacher because the teacher is elevated. So this school, because at that time, Gandhiji had fought and successfully obtained Indian independence. So he was the beacon for the whole of the colonial world. And so they decided to commission a statue of Gandhi and also name the school after Gandhi. It was called Mahatma Gandhi Kalasale. My father wanted to actually have an English medium school for the children of plantation workers, but the policy of the time, this is oral history, which he told me, would not allow that plantation workers' children had to go to a Tamil school. So it ended up being a Tamil school. And initially, because father was not in politics, he used to go often. He used to teach the boys carpentry. He used to play football and rounders with them and interact a lot with the children. And the school was very popular. It was actually built on land which is donated by my family. That land actually brought income for us because coconuts were planted on it, but they actually couldn't find any other land, suitable land. So right in the center of town, they chopped down coconut trees and they built the school. It's still there. So 1952, the school started. There's school sports for the boys, and then the next slide is the girls. So 1954, they decided to have a formal opening ceremony, and they decided to invite the president of the United Nations organization. This lady is Vijay Lakshmi Pandit. She was the sister of the first Prime Minister of India, Jawaharlal Nehru. She was scheduled to go to Singapore, and with the strong family links with Mahatma Gandhi, when she was told that the school was named after Mahatma Gandhi, she agreed to make an unscheduled stopover in this remote town of Sungai Siput to declare this, the school open. This was the emergency period, so it was a bit of a security risk, but she took that step. And because she was the president of the UNO, in addition to being Nehru's sister, this function attracted a lot of publicity in the English and in the Tamil media. Maybe have the next slide, please. Because, as I said, Vijay Lakshmi Pandit actually came here. So my father was the secretary of the organizing committee of the event, as well as being one of the founders of the school. So this brought him a lot of publicity. So this was a man who actually wanted to spend his life building schools for children and raising the standard of education, as he has said as much in his speech at this opening ceremony. But fate was against that. And because of the publicity that he received, some senior members of the Indian community approached him, this is 1954, and said, you must come and take up the presidentship of the MIC. Can you please come and stand for elections, which is in 1955. So my father actually said it was against his will, but he realized that the country was heading towards independence and the Indians did need some kind of leader. This is again Vijay Lakshmi Pandit. So he stood for elections in 1955 for the MIC presidentship and he won. At that point, MIC had already joined with UMNO and MCA to form the Alliance Coalition. So in the context of him being the president of the MIC, he met Tunku, he met the Tun father and son. And this is a picture of Tunku at our home in Sungai Siput. It's still our home. The gentleman standing in between father and Tunku is Chon Oma Onyoklin. So this was the beginning of the sort of alliance collaboration and the commencement of my father's political life. Maybe have the next slide, please. Okay, this is father being sworn in to serve this new nation called Malaya. And you can see that Tunku and Tun Razak are two of the witnesses in the first photo. May I have the next slide, please? Okay, this is my father, contrary to popular belief, was not a part of the first Merdeka mission, which was helmed by Tunku. I think father wanted to go, but Tunku didn't want to take him. I'm not sure why. So in order to build trust, basically father didn't push, for which he was hotly criticized by the Indian community, but they didn't realize that Tunku didn't want to take him. Anyway, this is unrecorded in written history, but apparently when they got to England, the British said, where's your Indian boy? We're not going to negotiate with just the Chinese and the Malays. We want to see the Indians as well. Hence the second Merdeka mission, which was successful, and you can see the smile on his face because they had basically set independence for August 1957. Maybe have the next slide, please. Okay, this is one of the perks of being in a position of, being a good position, meeting the first prime minister. He had met the sister, now he met the brother Nehru. I just put it there for, it's a nice photo. I like the way my father is standing so straight. Next photo. But by the way, one of the advice that Nehru gave him, Nehru told him to use Booker Washington. Booker Washington was a Black American leader, and my father used to like his advice, which was cast your bucket where you are. So Nehru basically advised my father, you know what, you Malaysian Indians, make Malaysia your home. Do not think to leave your roots here. Plant your roots here and do the best that you can, which was the advice that excellent advice coming from the Prime Minister of a new country. The next slide. Okay, so my father went into various ministries. The first ministry that he went into was Labor. Dr. Wong has asked me to focus more on the Ministry of Health. So the only thing I'd like to say about Labor was one of his contributions was that he set in place the commencement of legislation for the protection of employees. My father was very much a people-oriented person, and you will see as a theme everywhere he went, every ministry, he tries to see how best to serve the common man. So this, in his capacity as of Minister of Health, he was Minister of Health for 2 years, 57 to 59. And I'm going to read now, so just bear with me. Now, the system inherited from the British at Merdeka was that health was managed by the state, which means that there was no overall policy at a federal level. So as Tun was the first Minister of Health, he addressed the need for a consolidated plan for management of health issues with a 5-year plan. But he was in the ministry for only 2 years left. Anyway, the focus, as always, was on infrastructure. He found that there were too little clinics, too little doctors, too little nurses. There was an insufficient infrastructure to support the need of a young nation, rural and urban, and especially rural. So among the things included in his plan were to build 500-bedded district hospitals because the districts were short of hospitals, outpatient clinics, dental clinics, maternity centers, and dangerous diseases centers. He also heralded a program for vaccinations. At that time, the diseases that were around were malaria, cholera, and whooping cough. There was a shortage of medical personnel, both doctors and nurses. Some of the issues that he faced were, for example, the doctor-patient ratio was 1 to 100. During an official visit to Perak in 1958, wards had been closed down because there were insufficient doctors. So to bring in doctors from India, Sri Lanka was ongoing. So he pushed that further to bring in more doctors. He found that Indian doctors were hardworking. They were willing to work outside KL. They were willing to go to critical areas like, the mental hospital, leprosarium. They were willing to go the extra mile. Now, nursing, there were only 2 nursing training centers, one in KL, one in Penang. He arranged for there to be more nursing training centers in Alostar, JB, also KL. Even with this, there was an insufficiency of trainees. So he opened up the training to local participants so that this Malayanization also extended to the nursing services sector. Then he also set up under his watch, the blood bank was set up in GHKL, and apparently he was the first person to donate blood. And then he was instrumental in making medical studies available in MU. He was instrumental in having a training center for health inspectors set up in Tanglin Hospital in KL. This was GH in the 20s, by the way. He ensured that upgrades were carried out for hospitals in Taiping, Kanga, Kluang, Kuala Krai, Ipoh, and Kuala Terengganu. And then he regularly went on inspection of government hospitals. One thing that he personally told me was he was appalled at the facilities given to women who were pregnant. He noticed that the access to toilets were, first of all, squatting toilets, and they had to climb upstairs. So he was horrified by that. And he was very keen that maternity hospital should be built because at that point there wasn't one. So he proposed, as Minister of Health, the construction of a 250-bedded maternity hospital. So then he was pushed to Workforce and Telecoms in 1959. So we can go to the next slide. Again, his focus was on infrastructure. Under his watch, iconic buildings in KL which were constructed included the Parliament House, Museum Negara, National Monument, Subang International Airport, Masjid Negara. The Kuantan Satellite Station was also set up under his watch in 1970. He realized, again, his interest in getting the rural people better facilities. He noticed that there was an insufficiency of transport facilities to get from the rural areas into town, even if they wanted to bring in their produce. So again, just as he did with the health ministry, he got his people to come up with a 5-year plan for improving road transport routes. There was also upgrade and upkeep of existing roads. they arranged for key roads to be laid in Pahang, Perak, Kedah, Pahang, Selangor. These included areas such as Endau Rompin, Tanjung Karang, Sekinchan, Hutan Melintang, Gunung Kerian, Simpang Empat. He arranged for the East-West Highway, facilitating access between West and East Coast. Even the Federal Highway, which we go on most of the time, was under his watch. Now, the next time you go on the flyover from Jalan Birch to Jalan Sultan Hishamuddin near Masjid Negara, that too was constructed under his watch. Bridges were constructed. And, there was just a small illustration of his empathy for the Rakyat. There was a Mua ferry, which was made redundant by the construction of a bridge. So the ferry workers, kada kerja lagi. So what he did was he spoke to the state government and he had them allocate some land for the ferry workers, so at least they could work the land and look for an income. And then remember when he was in the Ministry of Health, he wanted to do a maternity hospital. Now that he was in the Ministry of Works, this was constructed as one of the Works Ministry's projects. So this was some of the stuff he did under Works. He was also, the Tugu Negara was under his watch. What's the next slide, please? Okay, this is Mom, myself, and my cousin. That's the Parliament under construction, also under his watch, but I thought that's a really cute picture. Now, I have no photos for this, but I'd just like to talk about some of the things he did under telecoms and posts. Under telecoms, he was part of the team that did the CCOM, the Southeast Asia Commonwealth Cable Project. This was an initiative for installation of subterranean cables from England across the Atlantic to Canada, North America, Australia, and Southeast Asia. This was of strategic importance to enable better communications and also reduce dependency on the British managed to own cable networks. And this was also going to support Borneo. His STD direct dialing was also done under his watch. The commencement of Radio Malaya in 1963 was under his watch. The introduction of VHF, very high frequency, which enabled TV access to Malacca and Perak was under his watch. 1967, again, a training center, the Telecoms Training Center was set up in Jalan Gurni. 1970, I already told you about the satellite station. Now that was some of the stuff he did under telecoms. And now coming to posts, again, his people-friendly attitude, he replaced the postman's bicycle with motorbikes. He increased the number of post offices to enable better access to the Rakyat, especially in rural areas, and also enabled mobile post offices. He enabled PO boxes for estate workers. And during his time, I mean, if you have time, do go to the Telecoms Museum. I had a full set of all the first day covers he did, but it got stolen. But he did the most amazing stamps. When Bank Nagara building was opened, they had coin stamps in gold color and silver color. They had pentagonal stamps. They had all sorts of different shaped stamps. If you look at the photo of the statues in the Tugu Nagara, it has a rough triangular shape. So the stamps that came out, when the National Monument was opened, the stamps that came out in commemoration were actually triangular. So he was creative in many ways. His final ministry was in national unity. He was there for a brief period in the post-May 13th era. They were difficult times. There's a lot of programs that he did, but I won't be able to go into it because there was really quite a lot. But what he did, because there was a lot of tension between the Chinese community, the educators, and the education, he used to have closed-door meetings with them to find out what their concerns were and to see how to go forward with a line of communication with government. And he did several initiatives like this, and he did initiatives where he encouraged people to play games together, speak together, all under national unity. Another thing that he did was at some point the lion dance was banned, and my father was instrumental in getting that ban lifted. His sense of all of this being part of being Malaysian was very strong. Now, the next two slides are basically of Tunku's last cabinet. You can see that with the Agong was actually the Sultan of Terengganu. 13 men to run a country, yeah? And then the next slide was some of these 13 men chilling. Okay? Okay, next one is, okay, this was something that afflicted the plantation worker community. 85% of Indians were on the plantations. Now, as it came close to Merdeka, there was a social evil called fragmentation. where people were basically chopping up estates and selling them to optimize their monies. And the estate workers were just abandoned. They were not given skills training, rehabilitation, compensation, nothing. They were literally on the road because the estate was the only home that they knew. So some of them came running to father to ask for a solution. I've often wondered why government couldn't come up with a solution, but they didn't. So what my father did was he set up a cooperative society called the National Land Finance Cooperative Society. He basically preached a gospel of self-help to the workers to say, look, we need to help ourselves. One share in the cooperative society is $100. It was dollars then, not ringgits. You contribute $10 a month. Over 10 months, you get a share. With the seed capital so raised, we will go out and buy the estate so that you become, in a way, the owner of the estate in which you live and work. And in this way, may I have the next slide, please? He motivated these workers who were so, they were completely broken because the only thing they had known, the families had known for 150, 200 years was estate life. This is a picture of my father speaking into a mic, and I've put this in because, can I have the next slide, please? When he went to estates, there was no electricity. In order to inspire the workers and encourage them to become members of the co-op, he would take this handheld megaphone, battery operated, and he would use this to speak to them. Next slide, please. Okay, so in 1960, on the 14th of May, they registered the cooperative society, and within a year, an estate, a 3,000-acre plantation in Kedah, Bukit Sidim Estate, came up for sale. Bukit Sidim Estate was actually owned by the Earl of Bute, a British peer, and apparently they needed to sell it in order to pay off his death duties, to contribute to it. So as it came up for sale, my father, using the NLFCS, bought the estate. So this was a landmark in the evolution of the Indian worker, because for the first time in this country, a workers' cooperative was able to buy a 3,000-acre estate and own it. So this was the probably my father handing over the deposit check. And the next slides, the next few slides, we had a formal opening ceremony of Bukit Sidim Estate becoming a part of the NLFCS stable. Tunku Abdul Rahman was the chief guest. So this is his arrival. The next slides is basically about this, yeah. And the next one as well. This is Tunku addressing everyone at the opening ceremony. Okay, I must mention my father's co-pilot being my mother. She used to follow him everywhere. And after my father spoke to the plantation community, you must remember there's no electricity, they have no facilities, they live in really substandard housing. And this woman would go with him, take the mosquito bites, sit on the ground. She was a vegetarian. Sometimes there's no food for her. And my mother could sing very well. So in order to inspire and motivate the workers, after my father has finished speaking, she would sing. She would sing the songs of Subramania Bharatiyar, which is basically about how to have a good life, a simple good life. And this kind of thing uplifted the workers, because which minister would bother to come to see you in your area? And not only did he go to see them, if they sat on the sand, he sat on the sand. If they ate on a leaf on the sand, he ate on a leaf on the sand. It's like what Rudyard Kipling says, if you can walk with kings and not lose the common touch. And in his mind, his role as the president of MIC, and in a way the leader of the Indian people, required him to understand where the 85% were and to help them. Next slide, please. Anyway, he was very happy with what he had given the people through NLFCS. At the height, I think that 70, 80,000 members. Next slide, please. These are all just slides relating to NLFCS. Now, this one, actually, I'm coming to the end of it because Malaysia is going through all sorts of challenges now. But there was a time where there was no cultural confusion. There was so much of coherence. The way my dad raised us, my cousins and I, although I'm an only child, I was raised with my cousins. And the way we were raised, I mean, we were told, you know what, you are Malaysian, we are Malaysian, embrace everything, whether it is the lion dance, the mayong, the menorah, the wayang kulit, the Bharatanatyam, it's all ours. So embrace it, celebrate it, love it. So this was the MIC AGM. That big column there was done by my father's sister. And you can see that they are garlanded. There are no issues. It was culturally very, very, very harmonious. The next one, please. So again, this is an indication of the kind of harmony there was. Batu Caves, Taipusam is world famous. Tunku used to come. Tun Sambanthan used to come. So they would go up to the office and my father would have them garlanded and they would mix and mingle. They would walk with the people. There was no sense of this not being the right thing to do. Everyone knows that Tunku was a Muslim by conviction and faith, you know, but he didn't have a problem with it. So this was the mood of the era. Next one, please. Okay, again, the celebration of so many components of our lives as Malaysians. My father used to be invited to these Chinese dramas and functions as well, and he was very happy to go. Next one, please. Okay, this was actually my mother's project, but my father encouraged her. These photos I like because you can see the parliament in construction at the back. We lived right next to the parliament. There was no fence in between our home, 15 Jalan Gilimar, and the parliament. So as children, we used to actually walk across. There was a big monsoon rain and there was a bridge. So we used to walk across and inspect the construction. So this dance is Bharatanatyam. It's a classical Indian dance. This was choreographed. The lady on the right is a very famous dancer. Her name is Shanta Dhananjayan. She's actually Malaysian from Malacca. She's now Indian. She's a very famous government recognized dancer in India. So she choreographed a Bharatanatyam to a classical Malay tune called Taman Gamalasari. So this was the contribution from Malaya to Singapore for the opening of the National Theatre there. I think it was 63 or 62. The Orkes RTM, which was led by Hamza Dolmat, who was a whiz on the violin, and the singer was Kamaria No, who was his sister. So she sang Taman Gamalasari, and they did a Bharatanatyam. So again, this was yet another instance of our being Malaysian, being so fully embraced and celebrated. These are the publicity shots that were taken in our grounds. Next one, please. Okay, now this is the personal side of my father. Quite apart from his commitment to doing whatever he could through his ministries for the Rakyat, what was he and who was he personally? My father loved agriculture. One of the projects that he did was he got a Taiwanese agriculturist called Mr. Chen. He parked him on one of the NLFCS estates in Sungai Siput, and he asked him to experiment to see how to upgrade vegetables. You know, this was something that was going on. And my father personally, in our garden, you could find all sorts of things, including Sarawak pepper, everything fruited. He had green fingers. But this was actually pushing the card. He went around asking ambassadors from countries which have grapes, I want grape seeds. Can you give me grape seeds? I was 8 or 9. He'll come home and tell me they think I'm mad because we're a tropical country. But you know what he did? This is a grapevine. In the backyard, you can see the parliament. And in the next slide, you will see that there actually were bunches of grapes in Kuala Lumpur in the 60s. And he was so proud of this because for him, it showed the potential for agriculture in this country. He was not a person to be beaten by established practices. In his mind, it's always, what else can we do? Why do we accept that this cannot be done? He didn't say it, but in the way he pushed it, and it was always with a smile. Next one, please. Here, he also grew it in a pot. And he took it to Parliament to show the Prime Minister, you know what, we can do this too. Of course, the Prime Minister's only comment was, your grape is sour. You know? So, yeah, so that's that. Next slide, please. Okay, now this is somewhat important to me because I'm coming to the end of this. Now, my father was honest to a T. He believed in integrity. He believed that he was very privileged to serve. He believed in entrepreneurialism. All his sense of entrepreneurialism, he pushed into the cooperative society for the benefit of the worker. He didn't do anything for himself. He believed in hard work. Everything that he did from his ministries. I mean, can you imagine after ministerial work, they take the car, he converted from a petrol car to a diesel car, and they go to the estates to try and recruit members for the NLFCS, you know. But this was a letter that my father, as Minister of Works, Posts and Telecoms, wrote to Tun Sambanthan, who was Minister of Finance. And this letter actually encapsulates the mood of the day, the privilege with which they came to public office, and the way in which they were so cautious about managing public funds. In a nutshell, what happened here was one of the ministers, Tokoh, his car was knocked into by a JKR lorry. So Mr. Tokoh didn't want to get an insurance claim because he didn't want to lose his NCD. And the Ministry of Works had enough money in the kitty in order to pay for the damage, but in order to do so, the Ministry of Works needed the consent of the Ministry of Finance. So this is what he says. The officers of the ministry have sought all sorts of opinion to justify the payment of this amount, but have been told by the Treasury Insurance Division that this amount is subject to the collision agreement entered into with various insurance firms. Hence, however, the Overseas Assurance Corporation are also party to this collision agreement. The insurance company ought to pay. The officials in the ministry are afraid to do anything that might bring about an audit query, and audit queries are particularly directed at these small amounts. One supposes it's taking care of the pennies. Mr. Kaur, on the other hand, feels that I should direct my officials to pay. This is a matter I'm averse to doing since it relates to finance, and I have to keep within the bounds laid by the Treasury, of which you are the Honorable Minister. There is, however, enough money in the ministry to pay this amount. And so he says to Tan Sri Sin, Konghi Fat Choi, please find a solution for this ever recurrent problem. I hope you get this letter after the Chinese New Year. How much do you think was the cost of the damage? $100.95. For $100.95, they went through this extent of governance and transparency. I mean, to me, it indicates the extent to which they were so careful of the public purse. And the interesting thing is, Tun Sambanthan has a reputation for having had a very tight hold on the nation's finances. So when I showed this letter to his daughter, Tan Siok Chu, her response was very amusing. She said, okay, your father wrote this, but what did my father say? Meaning to say, what, did he not approve the $100.95? I really don't know. But this is something that I wanted to share, their commitment to honesty. So I'm coming to the end of this. You know, when the Merdeka Constitution was presented to the Parliament, this is the Merdeka Constitution, not the document that we have now, which is multiply amended, as all of you probably know. My father spoke in support of the Constitution. And after his speech, he concluded with the next slide, the poem on the next slide. This is a poem that was written by Nobel laureate Rabindranath Tagore, whose picture I showed earlier, who also, as I said, composed the international anthem, and he wrote any number of nationalistic poetry. And this was my father's hope and dream and prayer for our homeland. So I'm going to read it and let us dwell on it for a while, because the principles in this poem are eternal. They are not restricted by time or space. And as much as Malaysia, like many, many other countries in the world, is facing challenge, there is no barrier to hope and to effort. So I conclude with this: where the mind is without fear, and the head is held high, where knowledge is free, where the world has not been broken up into fragments by narrow domestic walls, where words come out from the depths of truth, where tireless striving stretches its arms towards perfection, where the clear stream of reason has not lost its way into the dreary desert sand of dead habit, where the mind is led forward by thee into ever widening thought and action, into that heaven of freedom, my Father, let my country awake. So this was his prayer for the country then, as is my prayer for the country now. So this is about it. I found it a little bit difficult to condense a lot of the stuff that my father did, but I hope that it's been a little bit instructive about one of the men who signed the Declaration of Independence, and that it reflects the degree and the essence of his spirit of service and love. I think he felt very blessed that he was part of creating a new country. He used to tell me, you people are born free. And if me and my cousins were naughty, he would just tell the mothers, you know what, they're born after independence. You cannot expect them not to be naughty. That was his sense of respect for the independence that Malaya had, that sense of self-determination, autonomy, the sense that nobody can tell us what to do. Anyway, these were the feelings and the thoughts with which I assume all the founding fathers signed and hoped to build the building blocks upon which the country could continue to grow. And with this, Dr. Wong, once again, everyone out there, I'm so sorry for the snafu with Zoom. Dr. Wong, I thank you so much for this opportunity. I hope that it's been instructive and interesting for all of you.
Yes, Ms. Deva, it's very interesting. I just want to find out from you. It seems like he works very hard and he's involved in many projects.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you, how old did he pass away, and what was the cause of death?
Myocardial infarct, stress.
At what age?
59.
59 years old. Okay.
1 month from his 60th birthday. And I forgot to tell you, in the middle of all of this, if he came home, I mean, if he wasn't traveling or outstation, when he comes home at night, until I don't know how old I was sleeping with my parents, he would tell me a bedtime story. Most nights. And if he dozed off, I would tap him, wake him up, and he would continue the story without scolding me.
Okay, I noticed that one of the photo when he was in London, he was wearing the traditional costume. Can you elaborate on that?
No, because he was a Gandhian. So Gandhi used to wear handmade cotton. That was his protest against the British, because the British were exporting manufactured textiles to kill the Indian market. So my father, for the longest time, wore hand-spun cotton. And I mean, he was proud of being Malaysian Indian. That was traditional dress. And let me tell you a story. When they went to Pakistan, he followed Tunku to Pakistan. And Tunku was very proud of the fact that he was wearing traditional dress, because he wanted to make a statement to the Pakistanis that we Malaysians were different. So he wore that, and eventually Tunku convinced him to wear Western dress, which was only in the early 60s.
Okay, I think we have a very interesting session. Is there any questions from the floor? Fiona? Okay, I think if there's no further information, further question from the floor, maybe you can tell us what is your future dream for Malaysian, and what's the advice for Malaysian who is on this platform, especially doctors, because doctors are considered leaders of the country as well, because we are able to influence patients. So
I don't think I'm the right person to advise, because I think everyone here is a professional. You are seeing what is happening. You can see that this was the foundation upon which the country was set. Along the way, the Malaysian DNA has been reset. So in my personal capacity, what I do is, I think the worst problem that we're facing now, apart from corruption, is racism. So what I do in my personal life is treat everyone the same way, no matter how I am treated. I think we have to work harder to break the mindset of people that because you're a particular color or you speak a particular language, you are a particular way. The essence of this country was built on not even tolerance, it was built on understanding and a quality of embracing everyone, that we are all part of the same journey. How do each of us contribute? Because I think if we wait for politics to change, that's going to take a long time. So you can either make it a macro change or a micro change. I go with micro because macro is out of most of our reach. Another thing we can do is we can write articles. When you have medical camps, you are doctors, make sure that you go to areas where there are people who are not your race. Engage with them. So like if you go to a very Malay area, they will have a different idea of what a Chinese is from the way you treat them. It's little things that we can do in our personal lives to reach out to different people to break the mindset. What do you think? Do you agree?
Yep. I think I agree a lot about this, and I think it's the reason why I came up with this topic, and one is because I met you. Another reason is because when I spoke to you, the values that you told me about Tun Sambanthan was what impresses me. The righteousness, non-corrupt, and working very hard, and also looking after the underprivileged. I think that's
Mm.
the key of our founding fathers.
You
I think
know,
with that,
he has, sorry to interrupt, he has never made a racist comment. Never. You
okay.
know, racist, no distinction of class, caste, race, nothing. So when he died and I had exposure to this, I was 19. It was a very unusual thing for me because that's not how I was brought up.
Okay. Okay. So thank you, Ms. Dewa. We have a great session. Even though there's some technical glitch, I think
I'm
we've
so
done
sorry
well.
about the technical glitch, and thanks to my friend Surya who came over with her laptop.
Okay.
And I'm so sorry
No.
if I haven't given you room to ask questions.
No. It's good. Thanks. And we are on time. So with that, we'll end here. Thanks all of you for staying on. I think there's about 68 people is on the
Oh wow!
on the platform now. So thank you for staying on. Let's
Thank
see
you
you
so
next.
much for listening to the story of Tun Sambanthan.
Okay. Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.